When you learn about art history, you're almost forced to learn about religion as well. So much of art history is completely tied to one religion or another, that the reality is most religions take their artistic inspiration from other cultures and other religions. I'm going to go through and talk about religious art, and then try to make some connections of how some cultures may have gotten their inspiration from other ones. So my presentation is the evolution of religious art. So, where we began in the class learning about religious art is the Stone Age. So art from the Stone Age was often depictions of people and animals in relatively simple and flat forms. There were sculptures from this time as well, although not as frequent and still very flat and sort of not necessarily completely naturalistic. The majority of art was cave and rock drawings, so as you can see on the right, some sort of animal with a very contour line kind of outline, and then darker paint within that shows his body or some kind of coloration there. Historians believe some of these drawings were part of religious practices, sometimes created from ritual trances of shamans. There's evidence that the paintings may have been painted over several times, so once it faded, they kind of restored it, maybe because they hold religious significance. In architecture, cities also have been uncovered that include, presumably, some kind of temple space. So you can see on the left, nothing super specific, but sort of what might have been a city center, a market, and probably included some sort of place of worship. And another part from the Stone Age, another big location was definitely Stonehenge. It was sort of practical art, and another kind of architecture, religious place that also had a utilitarian use. So they believe, historians believe, that it was a burial site, a place of healing, and eventually an observatory, so it served multiple purposes during its time. Creating a religious location that's surrounded by layers of beliefs is something that actually you can see within a lot of different religions. So Christians actually founded some of the first hospitals, so you can kind of see the intermingling of Christianity, or basically a lot of religions, with utilitarian purposes or sort of functions for their places of worship. So Egyptian culture is a good example of religious art. A major part of their culture and religion is the depiction of animals. 1 in every 4 or 5 hieroglyphics is actually an image of an animal in one way or another, whether it means something or it's actually meaning the animal directly. Animals were part of their gods' images, so you can see on the left here 2 of their Egyptian gods in the afterlife weighing souls. So you can see there that they have animal heads and human bodies, and you can sort of see the reverse with the Sphinx on the right, this animal body with a human head. And Egyptians also believed that their pharaohs were divine, so they would depict their pharaohs in a very similar way, with these half-human, half-animal sort of forms. Egyptians also held pretty deep beliefs about the afterlife, so you can see that reflected in the way they buried their dead in the tombs, with a lot of wealth around them, with a lot of paintings, a lot of gold, a lot of very practical items a lot of the time. They included beautiful ornamentation. They wanted the dead to have wealth in their new sort of afterlife. It was very important. It's very important to note that how much art is in these locations. So, for example, this image here depicts the deceased doing an activity that he enjoyed during life, but it says in the caption that he actually is doing it in the afterlife, and it says that explicitly on the painting that he's enjoying it after death. So they believed in the importance of depicting the deceased actually doing these things, because it would give them the means to continue their life after death, sort of through the aiding with the art and the ornaments or what have you within their tomb. In Greece, major parts of their religion included the retelling of myths and stories about the gods and goddesses and the heroes. One example shown up in the right is the painted vase, which is a very popular piece of Greek history, Greek art. So this vase depicts Hercules wrestling Antinous. Antinous was half giant and half god, and Hercules was half god, half human. So you can kind of see how important the idea of humans and gods having very direct interactions is within their culture, within their belief system, because they have so often these animals or people who have had personal relationships with gods, produced offspring, presumably, and sort of, just see where their belief system comes from, this interaction of humans and gods. And then on the left is a statue of Athena holding the goddess Nike, goddess of victory, and you can see the scale of it. Down in the lower right, you can see a little guy standing down there. That kind of gives you an idea of how big this is. And you can definitely just witness how they felt about the gods based on statues like this. They worship them, they glorified them as much as they can, and obviously this is a huge depiction of important Greek art during the time. So sort of along with the Greeks are the Romans. They have pretty similar cultures and ideas. So here on the left you can see figure number 2 is an example of the temple within an important location within a Roman city. So with the forum, with the marketplace, it's right in the center of human activity there, so you can really see how important religion was and how important the emphasis of that religion within daily life was. And then to the left, you can see, to the right, you can see a mural that is painted in a room, believed to be a location used to celebrate the rites of the Greek god Dionysus. So if you wanted to commit your life to Dionysus specifically, you would complete some rites and rituals. The mural reflects what is believed to be a cultic ritual. So they believe that young women would marry the god Dionysus. So he had a lot of wives, I guess. But you can see in this artwork, they have the location where these things happen, and then also the art showing the people doing these things. So it was important for the history, it was important for the ritual, and it was just an important piece of art to understand the religion and the culture of the time. Islamic art is both unique and similar to previous religious art. Islamic architects would often redo a church or temple to fit their own needs. So kind of turn it into a mosque. They would decorate it more in their own style. So they're distinct, but they're also similar in the directly in the architecture aspect of it. But they're often more colorful, more sort of decorated than temples or churches might have been previously. And with Islamic art comes a lot of geometric patterns and a lot of calligraphy, because they didn't necessarily believe in depicting the human form and animal forms too much, because they believed it was kind of competing with their god. So you can see on the right is an example of an embellished Quran. So along with early Christian art, they kind of have a very similar style to Romans and Greeks. So on the left here, you can see a little kind of carving of the Archangel Michael, but he is apparently kind of depicted in a similar way to what the goddess Nike has been depicted, so similar in his stance and in what he's holding and stuff like that. So you can definitely see some Greek and Roman influences within early Christian art, and it also might have been to sort of disguise the meaning of it, because Christianity was obviously not always accepted within Greek and Roman cultures. And up in the right-hand corner, you can see a painted church ceiling that shows important figures from the Bible, including Jesus himself, and may have also included whoever paid for it, the patrons, were sometimes depicted within the Christian art that was provided to them. And sort of in the same way, early medieval art sort of was, it was embellished, but it was also practical, because as you can see on the left, this is a depiction of a biblical figure actually writing the Bible, and something like that, where it was actually included within certain Bibles or certain sections of the Bibles, made it easier for people who were illiterate or people who maybe didn't have access to a full Bible understand the content of it. So paintings like this were very important to the people of the time. And on the right, you can see sort of an embellished letter, actually, and that was included in Bibles as well of the time, where you would sort of want it to be as beautiful and as masterful as possible, because it is a holy book. So you can kind of see where they might have gotten some inspiration from the Quran and the Islamic painters of that time, because they believed highly in embellishing and really just making their holy book look so nice. Yeah. So from here you can kind of get a scope of what religious art has looked like to different cultures over time.